This 25th anniversary gives us the opportunity to say to the world that those who want to spread terror will never succeed, because we will not allow the attack to fade into oblivion.
Welcome back to the Argentina Project podcast. I'm your host, Benjamin Gedan.
And I'm your producer, Katie Hopkins.
Today, with the help of former U.S. Ambassador to Argentina, Tony Wayne.
Our colleague here at the Wilson Center.
That's right, he is. We will discuss the AMIA bombing in Buenos Aires, 25 years after the worst terrorist attack in Argentina's history.
The bombing by Hezbollah killed 85 people and left hundreds more wounded, really shaking the global Jewish community. Around 200,000 Jews live in Argentina, the biggest Jewish population in all of Latin America and 7th largest in the world.
Yet no one has been held accountable. The suspects live freely in Iran. They've traveled to more than 20 countries despite Interpol red notices.
But Argentina is still fighting for justice in the AMIA bombing case. It recently hosted a counterterrorism ministerial in Buenos Aires, which Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and regional leaders attended. What's more, President Mauricio Macri has issued an executive order designating Hezbollah a terrorist organization, making Argentina the first Latin American country to ever do so.
That designation broadens the tools the government can use against Hezbollah, and it's especially designed to stop Hezbollah financing in the tri-border area.
That's the lawless region, bordering Argentina, Brazil, and Paraguay.
That's right. Already, Argentina has begun to freeze assets of suspected Hezbollah terrorists.
But our most loyal fans know we've already covered all of this in our recent event at the Wilson Center, which featured State Department's counterterrorism coordinator, Ambassador Nathan Sales, Argentine Ambassador Fernando Orestiroa, and counterterrorism experts. The webcast is linked in the description, or catch us on C-SPAN.
Ambassador Wayne, thank you so much for coming on our podcast.
It's great to be with you, Benjamin.
You served as ambassador in Argentina from 2006 to 2009. This was at the end of Nestor Kirchner's presidency, the beginning of his wife and successor, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner's presidency. You've got insights into AMIA, the case, both culturally and politically, and from a law enforcement perspective in Argentina that I think will be very valuable for our audience. My first question for you is why it seems to loom large as an issue in Argentina. The Jewish community in Argentina is large relative to other Jewish communities worldwide, but in absolute size in Argentina, it's not an enormous part of a country that's largely homogeneous and Catholic. Tell me, why does it seem to be such an important cultural and political phenomenon in Argentina ever since the bombing in 1994?
Well, I think there are two aspects to this. The first one is that it was a blow to the feeling of Argentina that they were safe from everything that was going on in the rest of the world. You have to remember, geographically, Argentina is way down south, and so the rest of the world looks far away. This was bringing those conflicts from the Middle East, conflicts that are going on geopolitically, right to their home turf. And in that sense, the attack on the Israeli embassy left a big scar also, but then the AMIA attack was killing Argentines, and that left a lot of scars. In addition, though the Jewish community is relatively small in terms of population, they have a lot of very achieving members in that community who are very active in various professional fields, who are active in politics, and not in the sense of being a lobby, but they're just in society offering, giving, in the commercial area, buying and selling, and in universities and in the legal profession and other places. So they're present and well-known and highly respected. And Argentines cared about the effects on that community as well as what it said about Argentina, that this kind of attack could take place.
As you know, here at the Wilson Center, with partners from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, we hosted an event marking the 25th anniversary of the bombing. And there were several references to the fact that this has not been a partisan issue in Argentina. And maybe that results from the dynamics you just described with the Jewish community in Argentina focusing effectively on the subject, but that this has been something Argentina uniformly promoted in terms of justice for the victims of AMIA and accountability for Iran and Hezbollah throughout Argentine history, and including under Nestor Kirchner, who is a figure that did not have great relations with the United States, was part of an administration that was rethinking Argentine foreign policy and its relationships worldwide. But Nestor was very dedicated, as I recall, to the subject. Is that how you remember it from your time in the embassy?
It is very much. There was a very large official presence at the commemoration of these events. It got a lot of attention from the leaders, and that was true not only for Nestor but for Christina in the years that I was there. And I remember having conversations with her where she talked about this as an important event that needed to be commemorated, and she was very supportive of that time of investigation to find the perpetrators of this horrible act.
What went wrong? I mean, so you've brought up Cristina Fernández de Kirchner. She succeeds her husband and maintains his posture toward Iran, toward Hezbollah, toward the importance of pursuing justice in this case. And seemingly abruptly, she changes tact 180 degrees. The history is too detailed and complex to get into, but essentially decides she would collaborate with Iran on some sort of joint investigation, which most people saw at the time as a whitewash. And in fact, she's now standing trial for criminal cover-up and treason in having disrupted Argentina's efforts to hold Iran accountable. What went wrong?
I think that she felt increasingly isolated internationally, and she was aligning more closely with Venezuela and the other Venezuelans' allies. And she was searching for ways to strengthen Argentina's commercial exchanges, and that she saw here's a possibility with Iran to do that, and maybe have a way out if we have a joint investigation of this longtime irritant. It would not, of course, been a policy that I would have supported or encouraged. I had long left Argentina, but I think it was that conjunction of a number of different factors that she was looking for new ways, new partners, new markets, new ways to extend Argentina's relationships, and she lighted on Iran.
And the decision had real consequences. I mean, the investigation had not succeeded in bringing the suspects to Argentina to stand trial even before Cristina. Certainly, progress was frozen during this period of so-called collaboration. But there were even bigger repercussions, alienating the Argentine Jewish community. What was the reaction within the United States? You were no longer the ambassador, but I think you were still at the State Department. You were later ambassador to Mexico and other senior positions. How did the U.S. react to this rapprochement between Argentina and one of the U.S. key adversaries in the Middle East, Iran, and on an issue that's important to the U.S. Congress and the executive branch?
Well, it was one more area that the U.S. government was critical of Cristina Fernández de Kirchner and her foreign policy and her international policy. The U.S. still saw Iran not just responsible for this act of terrorism, but responsible for supporting a number of other acts of terrorism. And it really was surprised and terribly disappointed. But it also came in a period when the United States' relationship with Argentina was not sailing high on a whole range of different issues, including G20 issues, where Argentina was a member of the G20, and increasingly we were just taking very different positions. And this was during the time of President Obama, so it's not as if this was a really conservative U.S. administration at that time. It was an administration looking for partners, but Argentina had moved very much into the Chavista camp, and so this new opening to Iran was just seen as part of that moving to, I don't know if you would call it a more left position, but certainly a position far out of consensus with the rest of the Western and G20 democracies and economies.
Now, the posture of the current president of Argentina, Mauricio Macri, has reverted Argentina back, it appears to me, to its traditional position here, which is this is one of its key foreign policy concerns. This is the biggest issue in its relationship, of course, with Iran. And this is an area now where it's in concert with U.S. interests. Is that your sense of how the relationship is now approaching the AMIA question?
I think so. And it's important to remember that even during the period of time when I was there and we were looking at the AMIA case, our real objective was to have as solid a case as possible developed about who was responsible and to bring them to justice. And the real lead in this case was the prosecutor, Alberto Nisman. And to the degree that he came up with good evidence, good arguments, we were willing to be supportive of that with others in international fora, in Interpol. It was the period of time that these names were put on the Interpol list. And it was really in that context of supporting him in doing this, based on the belief that Iran was supporting terrorism in a lot of places around the world, not just Argentina, and other places also, and that needed to be stopped.
Before we conclude, we should focus on the role of international actors in this issue, including the United States, which you represented in Buenos Aires. Argentina, given the weight of its diplomatic muscle and its size and remoteness geographically, is not able to carry water independently on an issue like this, neither at Interpol, frankly, nor necessarily in its own criminal justice system in terms of the tools it needs. One of the reasons we hosted an event on the subject is that these bombing suspects, despite the red notices, despite Argentine arrest warrants, they've traveled to at least 20 countries. They've not been arrested, detained, extradited, and tried in Argentina. What's the role of the United States? What's our interest and what's our role in seeking justice for the victims of this attack 25 years ago?
Well, I think we saw it as part of looking for justice for anybody that was attacked, including potentially American citizens if there was Iranian-supported terrorism. And that it is important that there be a cost to supporting terrorism or participating in terrorism. And in this case, of course, there were no U.S. citizens involved, but there was an active prosecutor who was trying to build a case. As you said, he was struggling to build a case. It's not that they interact every day with the rest of the international community and go to Interpol and have these well-developed cases presented. So there was a dialogue going on between the FBI and him on how solid is this presentation, have you laid out all the evidence, do you feel it's strong? And at a certain point, my colleagues who worked in the embassy came to me and said, we think this is a good case. We think we should support it. And so through the Department of Justice, through others, we did support Argentina, and we talked to others to support them. They had to go show everybody their case, and they had to make their own argument. But we and other allies in the war against terror were very supportive in doing this, in part because it's in nobody's interest that there be impunity for such horrible actions against unarmed, unexpecting civilians using terrorism.
Ambassador Tony Wayne, former U.S. ambassador to Argentina, thank you so much for sharing your memories and observations about this important issue.
It's my great pleasure. Thank you. And thank you for bringing all this attention to this important anniversary.
And now, some bonus audio from our recent event at the Wilson Center, featuring State Department's Counterterrorism Coordinator, Nathan Sales. Enjoy.
It's been a quarter of a century since the AMIA bombing, yet the threats from Iran, the IRGC, and Hezbollah remain undiminished. The regime in Tehran continues to provide hundreds of millions of dollars every year to terrorists around the world. It has provided Hezbollah alone some $700 million a year. It does this despite the ongoing economic turmoil that's impoverishing many of its people.
And thankfully, our producer is a wonderful editor.
That's me, Katie Hopkins. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe to the Argentina Project podcast on SoundCloud and sign up for our weekly newsletter at wilsoncenter.org/weekly-asado.